Dub Nation. Time for the real and inside story on Warriors basketball.
Curry sidestep, Curry drive, Curry flip, Curry good!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
We want to keep this show as interactive as possible. It's instant reaction. It's hearing from the fans. It's going inside the locker room.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Jokic has it. Clock ticks. Got to put one up. Jokic for the win. Oh, it's good! Jokic got it off in time, and the Nuggets win it.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? A 7-footer off the dribble, and look, he dinked it in, but just to get it up there is an unbelievable play on an unbelievable night.
Well, that's a hell of a way to start the show. We welcome you in. It's Just Dubs. Good Saturday morning to you right here on KNBR, the sports leader. It's John Dickinson, joined by Greg Silver as well. The great Greg Silver making the executive decision to play one of the most just gut-punching moments the Warriors have had in the last decade go against them to begin this show. But it is a pleasure to be here regardless, as we're going to be doing this each and every Saturday morning right here on The Sports Leader for at least 2 hours. Taking your phone calls and talking all things NBA and Golden State Warriors basketball, and really looking forward to it. Have done a Warriors-centric, NBA-centric show in the Bay here for the better part of the last decade, and thrilled to bring it over here to KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR is the number, as you know, to participate in the program. And you can give us a call or shoot us a text here. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is always open. It's a pleasure to be live on YouTube and Twitch as well. Appreciate everybody filing in here as we're with you for the next 2 hours. And what a week it's been for the Golden State Warriors. My goodness. The loss to the Nuggets on Thursday, blowing the 18-point lead. Nikola Jokic hitting the 39-foot bank shot to send the Warriors home losers in that one. Jonathan Kuminga has lost faith in Steve Kerr, although it appears as if the two have at least started to move forward as the Warriors bounce back and got one of the most uninspiring victories of the 2023, now into 2024 NBA season for them. Chris Paul's injured. It was only a matter of time, unfortunately. Fractured hand for Chris Paul, so he's going to have surgery next week. When will Draymond Green return? Been a lot of news about that over the last 6 or 7 days, with Steve Kerr hinting on Tuesday in his pregame press conference, haven't seen him, hadn't been around, hadn't practiced. If he's in, it hasn't been with us. Just kind of making everybody think, well, Draymond's not coming back anytime soon. But then there's a Woj report from ESPN that Draymond Green will be back in the Golden State Warriors facility shortly to ramp up toward a return.
Number one, who cares?
Well, I think Warrior fans care. I think Steph Curry cares. I think Steve Kerr cares. I think Mike Dunleavy Jr. cares. I think Joe Lacob cares. So the Warriors adjusting to life without Draymond Green, 7-5, I believe now, in the 12 games that Draymond's missed. I may have missed one in there because the games have just come so rapidly here as we get into the new year, and Warriors are going to be on the court again tomorrow against the Toronto Raptors before getting a couple of days off. And then they actually have to play some road games. All the drama, everything that's gone on with the Warriors, they basically have been home for the most part for the better part of the last month and a half to 2 months. So a lot to get into for the next couple of hours here on The Sports Leader. It's Just Dubs from now until noon. It's John Dickinson here on The Sports Leader. Again, as the intro suggested, want to keep the show as interactive as possible, both the YouTube chat, also the texts, also the phone calls, as we look to build this thing and talk a lot of Warriors and NBA here on The Sports Leader. All right, let's bring in the great Greg Silver. Man, what I don't want to shame you right out of the gate here, Greg, the producer, and I'm saying co-host of this show, which is launched a couple of weeks ago as a podcast. And really this show, and we don't want to belabor or spend too much time talking about it because we want to get the actual meat and potatoes of this thing. But this show is going to live both on the air here on KNBR and as a podcast. And so if you miss it today, you can grab the podcast anytime. You can watch it back on YouTube. But there's also going to be times maybe where, due to some other programming issues, we may not be on, or we may get kicked to one of the sister stations here. But we're going to drop podcasts throughout the course of the week, and just when big things happen around our Dubs OT shows, which are going on following each and every Warriors game here on The Sports Leader. But, Greg, great to have you along. We've been working together here for just over a month. It's been a blast to this point as we continue to have this thing grow. And I just want to tell you first, appreciate you. Welcome in. And not a shortage of things to talk about, Greg.
How's it going, JD? Thank you to everybody tuning in. I'm so excited to have a Just Dubs Saturday programming here. JD's been awesome. If you couldn't tell, we've been doing a lot of work over the last month or so as we were getting this off the ground. So really, really cool to be able to do this on a Saturday. We got Raph in the building as well. Going to be a great couple of hours. And I mean, I got to laugh a little bit because last night we're talking off the air, and this was kind of the perfect time to be launching the Just Dubs on-air edition. I'm worried there's not enough going on with the Warriors, huh? Like, where's the drama? I don't have enough headlines to talk about for 2 hours, right?
No, it's incredible. When you look at Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga trying to move forward, now Chris Paul is injured, so that creates another series of decisions that Steve Kerr's going to have to make. Does this team make a trade? Can Kerr and Kuminga mend fences after Kuminga's lost faith in Steve Kerr, stemming from Kuminga not being on the floor for basically the last 18 minutes as the Warriors blew the 18-point lead when Jokic banked in the three from 39 feet to send the Warriors to yet another loss. You've got this team that's 10th in the West, but still under 500, a couple of games to go on the homestand. And then the trade deadline is coming up a month from Monday, February 8th. So while everybody around here is getting ready for the NFL and focusing in on the Dubs and the trade deadline is actually before the Super Bowl, believe it or not. So all eyes I know in the Bay are on what the 49ers are doing, but the trade deadline is coming up on the 8th. And the Warriors, I think, find themselves at a crossroads as to whether this team is worth saving, at least in its current form, and how does this team attempt to get better? Because the young players, for the most part, have been productive, have helped. From Kuminga of late to Moses Moody earlier in the year before he had gotten benched. He's going to get another opportunity, but Podziemski and Trace Jackson-Davis have both been granted opportunities, and I think Podziemski has really received the most opportunities, at least consistently, to be out there. He's put a real positive impact. So it's all about lineups. It's all about rotations. It's all about combinations of different players that are going to be playing together. But Steve Kerr's got a lot to try and figure out. And now you take CP3 away after you've already taken Draymond away. GP2 came back, and now he's gone again for at least another month. And then the Warriors have to decide amid all of this if they're going to look to make some kind of a trade, if making some kind of a trade to basically take from some of the young to become more veteran-laden? Or is it a scenario where maybe you look to trade veterans in an attempt to clear the glut and just allow the young players to play a little bit more? Now, that would be an admission, Greg, that this team is potentially unable to contend for a championship. And I think that's something like if you, and like I'll just come out of the gate hot. If you make the decision in the next month that you're trading veterans to open up more time for young players, you're admitting that this team's not winning a championship on February 8th this season. But you'd be sacrificing this season to maybe get players to a point where you're better for it next season. But is that too far of a gap to be bridged, I think becomes a lot of the question. So a lot to get into here on the Sports Leader for the next couple of hours. 808 KNBR is the number. And let's just kind of set everything up as people file into the YouTube chat here on the Sports Leader. I think we got to start with Steve Kerr, and we got to start with Jonathan Kuminga and just where the Warriors go there. Because Friday was really all about mending fences. Friday was all about how would Steve Kerr react to the fact that Jonathan Kuminga's comments in The Athletic, to Shams, to Anthony Slater, that he basically lost faith in Steve Kerr after what had been multiple in his or his agent or whoever leaked whatever to The Athletic, that he doesn't know what his role is going to be. He's not playing enough. He wants to be out on the floor. Paraphrasing, but that's the gist. How would they respond to it? Well, Steve Kerr did respond to that. And it started with this lengthy answer in what was a extended pregame media availability yesterday before the Warriors played the Pistons. And Steve Kerr just flat out addressed the fact that he and Kuminga spoke about what had been discussed.
We talked, obviously those things are better discussed behind the scenes. Anytime something like that goes public, then it creates, a distraction. And I think, it's important for all of our guys. And I talked to our whole team about it. It's like, you got an issue, I'm here. I am the most accessible coach in the league probably. My door's always open. And I have players all the time come talk to me, and I encourage it. And it's a difficult situation because every player naturally has his own goals, his own dreams. Everybody wants to flourish. Everybody wants to blossom. And we have a lot of guys who are capable of playing, and I have very difficult decisions to make each and every night. JK is a young player who's growing. He's getting better. That's why he's been in the starting lineup. He will continue to grow, and this is all part of his growth.
Then you kind of mentioned it was a Wiggins-Kuminga choice last night. I know you've talked about trying to find combinations where they work together. Where are you on that? Because I know you've sprinkled some out there, but it's still just...
Yeah, I mean, we would still like to, but we're obviously every game is tight, and we're trying to win every game, and we want to put ourselves in a great position playoff-wise. So it's one of the challenges of this season. Really is we're exploring combinations, but at the same time trying to win, and so we don't have a long time to explore if something's not going well. And at this point, our closing lineups have been different often night after night, and so we haven't been able to kind of find that 1 5-man group that we're just automatically going to go to, and that makes it tricky for the players and tricky for the staff too.
It has been tricky, and basically what it has come down to is, does Andrew Wiggins play at the end of the game or does Jonathan Kuminga play at the end of the game? And those two did play on the floor together against the Pistons last night, and that was probably the most success that they had on the floor together in any stint this season. The numbers had not been good overall, and were not good in the Denver game specifically. I think it was -7 in a short period of time. Now, they were +7 last night together on the court and helped in the second half the Warriors jump out to a lead that they immediately gave away and found themselves playing their 28th clutch game of the year, but I digress. But it is about combinations and closing lineups, and unfortunately, while Steve Kerr has been on record saying that he didn't like the tape with those two on the floor together, and the numbers don't back up those two being on the floor together, figuring out ways to get them on the floor together is also something that Steve Kerr doesn't necessarily want to take too much time in trying to work through, because if it doesn't work out, it could lead you to lose games. And cutting to the chase here, this team can't really afford to lose too many more games trying to tinker and figure out what's best. I think if there's been a knock on this Warriors team in each of the last 2 years, it's that they've spent far too much time tinkering, and they've lost games because of it. So that was Steve Kerr. And more to the point, let's go ahead and set up the other cut, and then we'll get to the Kuminga quotes, because Kuminga did speak in the locker room last night after the ball game. No audio or video of that, but we do have some quotes. A great story from The Athletic. ESPN wrote about it. Everybody wrote about it for those that were in the locker room at Chase last night. So Kuminga did respond, and I think the responses, and I thought Steve Kerr was pretty stand-up and forthcoming about the way he explained that situation. Basically, understanding why Kuminga was upset, but also making the point that he wasn't just going to come out and say, hey, I screwed up, the way that he did when Moses Moody didn't play in Sacramento about a month ago. I understand he's upset, need to get him on the floor, but also wasn't going to just flat out say, hey, my bad. And I think part of that was because Kuminga didn't handle it in the best way. As much as I think we all would agree, and we can have significant debates on Jonathan Kuminga and his impact and his ceiling and role player versus potential future star and the talent that everybody sees and how he fits with this team versus others. I think we can debate a bunch of different things surrounding Kuminga. The one thing that I don't really think is up for debate is the simple fact that Kerr did screw up and he should have been back in the game on Thursday against Denver when things were going awry. So Steve Kerr was asked about that before the game yesterday, and he reiterated the decision as to why Kuminga ended up not being on the floor that led to this whole mess.
He was playing great, but we had another group that came in playing great. So I think when J.K. went out, we were down one, and then we finished the quarter strongly, so we stayed with the same group. Actually, no, I think we made a couple subs to start the fourth, but we went on a quick run and got up to 18, and Wiggs was playing really well. He had a couple buckets, but he was guarding Murray, and to be perfectly frank, it came down to a decision of just sticking with Wiggs because I thought he was doing a good job. At the end of the game, I look at the box score and I'm like, J.K. only played 18 minutes. Like that's, I got to get him out there for longer. But these are really difficult decisions because it's not just as simple as how many minutes a guy plays. It's who's playing and what's the combination, what's happening in the game. There's only 5 spots, and we have, I've said this over and over again, we have a lot of people who are very capable of being out there. But the way the game was flowing, I decided to stay with the group that was there.
All right, so parsing through all of that, again, I think the error for Steve Kerr wasn't that he didn't go back to Kuminga when the Warriors were up 18 with 7 minutes to go. I think the error, and we talked about this on the Dubs OT shows, the error was once the lead started to evaporate and it got close to 10 with about 5 minutes to go, Wiggins was no longer playing well and the Warriors needed a little bit of a scoring punch, and Kuminga had provided energy and ability to get to the rim and get fouled. The Nuggets basically couldn't guard him for the time that he was on the floor. I mean, he got Jamal Murray in foul trouble, picked up his 4th foul third quarter, which really was what allowed the Warriors to build the 18-point lead in the first place. So I think the error was there, but Steve Kerr does find himself in this position now where these closing lineups are problematic because Wiggins and Kuminga together just has not worked, and Kerr's reluctant to go through the process of trying to figure it out because he thinks they're going to lose games in the process. You've got Steph Curry and Klay Thompson who are going to be on the floor. In the Denver game specifically, you got Kevon Looney who needs to be on the floor, or Trace Jackson Davis. You got to have a center out there. I'm not turning this into a Looney TJD debate, but you got to have a center out there for Jokic. And the Warriors without Draymond have been playing either Chris Paul or Podziemski as a playmaker along with Steph and Klay. Basically, Klay's turned into the 3. That's the underlying thing that I don't think is getting a lot of it. I think part of the reason the Kuminga Wiggins thing doesn't work is because Klay Thompson's not really a 2 anymore. Like, it used to be Steph and Clay, greatest shooting backcourt ever, which, I mean, they still are that. But on a night-in, night-out basis, it's less consistent, especially in the Clay department. And so you're not getting the consistent shooting from Clay that you would usually get that I think would allow those other two to be out there. Wiggins has also shot the ball pretty terribly. Kuminga doesn't really make threes. He's kind of been streaky with it. But even as well as he's played lately, he's not making threes. So you don't have enough shooting out there. And I think Wiggins does. Kuminga's so aggressive. Wiggins is not as aggressive when Kuminga's out there. So it creates this list of different issues in conjunction with all the different players that the Warriors want to have out on the floor and basically need to have out on the floor. So that was part of the decision. But the theme of yesterday was Kerr and Kuminga moving forward. And when Steve Kerr says 18 minutes, that's not enough. Well, he got him 36 last night. Season high 36 minutes for Jonathan Kuminga. Had all 11 of his 11 points in the first half, but still played well enough to be a game high plus 16. And look, Jonathan Kuminga should always be playing against the Detroits and the Portlands and the young, athletic, struggling to win teams. Because those are the teams that have a lot of players that basically are in his NBA position. Young players trying to find themselves. Like, he can thrive against light competition. Now, is it more of a question at times against other teams? And because that really gets into the bigger debate. And 808 KNBR is the phone number. The bigger debate, as we look at how the Warriors move forward with Kuminga and Steve Kerr, the bigger debate, it isn't that Kuminga should play. It's that should Kuminga just be granted a finishing slot or a starting slot every night? And that's the part where I think it starts to get a little bit heated and it starts to get a little bit more murky. I want to get to the Kuminga quotes because he did speak to it. And a lot of this I'm taking from The Athletic. Great story, Anthony Slater, as always, so make sure you read it. But I'm picking some of the quotes here from Jonathan Kuminga from Slater's story. I love it here. I got drafted here. There's always ups and downs. I feel like when you look at all the ups and downs, that will confuse a lot of people. But I know Steve believes in me. I know he trusts me at this point. It was just more about communication and better understanding. It was no beef, none of that. Scratch whatever happens. It's the past. Move on with better understanding and hope we can all work with each other and help this team and leave everything in the past. So now you've got Steve Kerr moving forward, positive comments. You've got Kuminga moving forward, positive comments. Because I'll be honest, going into Friday, I'm thinking something's got to give. There may need to be a trade. Straight up. Going into yesterday, I'm thinking Kuminga wants out. We talked about it on Dubs OT on Thursday. They may have to look to move him. Whether that winds up being the case or not, it's good that both have been able to mend things at least short term, because the last thing you want, even if the Warriors are going to be looking to improve by maybe moving Kuminga and getting him to a spot where he can go out and thrive and be able to play consistently, if that is the path of which the Warriors choose to go down, then it becomes a situation where you want the value to be as high as possible. You don't want it to be, hey, these two are having a beef. So I think it's great that Kuminga said that. More from the Anthony Slater story. Quote, altogether, a better understanding of certain things on the floor I need to do to get the team better, Kuminga said. Who is he going with tonight or the next night? Who he trusts the most? As a coach, you talk about who you trust the most or who is producing. As we got together and spoke about it, it went well. So that's good. Those are all good things. And look, we had somebody in the YouTube chat say, I wonder if Wiggins and Kuminga feel like they're competing. Well, Kuminga addressed that and said that he went in and basically wanted to talk to Steve Kerr because, quote, he didn't want it to seem like, and I'll just read it straight, I don't want it to seem like me and Wiggs are out here fighting every day for minutes. So Kuminga was a little put off by maybe the way it had been framed, as real as that is. As real as it is that basically right now it is one of the two. So Kuminga went on to say, quote, I never complained about playing time. We were just talking about if I do great at something, just go back and remind him, yo, coach, what do I need to do to get better at this? What do I need to do to gain more trust or more minutes? Like I said, it's more about communication, better understanding. I think the reality here is the fact that Kuminga didn't do anything wrong. And I think sometimes when Kuminga doesn't play, he thinks he does do things wrong. And I think he takes it to heart. I think he gets frustrated by it, but I think he takes it to heart. And I think that creates some issues. And I think he needs to be reassured by the head coach, like, hey, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes it's just the best matchup that maybe you're not on the floor. Or sometimes maybe Steve Kerr makes a mistake, like we all agree that he did on Thursday night. So all in all, I think about as good as could possibly be expected for Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga to try and move forward. But now it becomes an issue of, can Wiggins and Kuminga play together? What are the right combinations to get Kuminga on the floor consistently? He did play a season-high 36 minutes last night. How does Draymond Green's return impact this? And now Chris Paul's out. So the Warriors have to figure that bunch of problems out. At 1 under 500, now 10th in the West. They did move ahead of the Lakers last night because the Lakers are suddenly in shambles. And then you got the trade deadline coming up in a month and 2 days. So, yeah, a lot to get into here in our first Just Dubs show here on KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR, Sean and Ben, I see you on the phone lines. YouTube chat is rolling. We'll pause here, and we'll come back and we'll get to the phones. We'll get to the YouTube chat. We'll get to more of the sound as it's Just Dubs here on 104.5 and 680, the sports leader. It isn't that Kuminga should play. It's that should Kuminga just be granted a finishing slot or a starting slot every night?
live from downtown.
Hurry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
They got Alec Burks. Kuminga trying to walk him down, getting to that little mid-range. Jonathan Kuminga has double figures for the 15th straight game.
He's so good at seeing like when the defense isn't coming. No defenders are coming to double. It's you and your man. Go at his head.
Yeah, that's become a strength of Jonathan Kuminga. Fitz and Kalena on NBC Sports Bay Area. 2 of Kuminga's 11 in the first half. Kuminga finished with 11. Game high, though, plus 16 for the Warriors. Warriors beat the Pistons 113-109. It's John Dickinson. It's Just Dubs here on KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR, the number. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open as well. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch. We'll get to the YouTube chat coming up, as this is our debut program of Just Dubs. Going to be doing this each and every Saturday here on the sports leader. 808 KNBR, again, is the number. Talking Steve Kerr, Jonathan Kuminga. Where do the Warriors go from here? A lot of different things going on with this team. Chris Paul also going to be out for a while, set to have surgery on a fractured hand coming up in the next few days, next week. Let's get to the phones, though, and get it started with Ben in Santa Rosa here on the sports leader. Hey, Ben.
Hey, how you doing, JD?
Doing well. Appreciate you calling.
Good. Hey, enjoy the show. Enjoy having you back. I used to listen to you when you were on the other station a little bit. So yeah, it's good to hear you. Resurrected. This Warriors team. I've never seen anything like this. This team. The problem is it's just with the Draymond things and all the other things going on. The young players, the combination of young players and vets. It's like there's no way to figure out a starting rotation. And without a starting rotation, this team has no shot at winning a championship. And I don't know, because the problem is, even if you figure out a starting rotation, I don't know if there's enough here to win a championship. And I think that's what everyone's most concerned about. It's at the forefront. I was listening to Tim and Tom last night because I was driving around, and even against the Pistons with a couple minutes left, you could tell there was just this uneasiness in Tim's voice, like, are they going to blow this one too? Especially the last couple minutes. And it's the Pistons. They've had so many double-digit leads going into the fourth quarter with against teams and lost that lead. That's disconcerting. And how do you if Kurt can't figure out a starting lineup with all his experience, I don't know if one exists here that's going to win them a championship unless they make a trade. And then if they make a trade, then what do you do? I mean,
you're starting over, right? You got to start over with combinations and how it all works and how it impacts everybody. And guys are going to be gone. It's kind of a never-ending thing.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is that if you start making trades and moving some of the young guys, then you're eliminating the future, right? I mean, in a few years when Clay and Steph and everybody is gone, what are you gonna have then? So it's like it's a mess, and I hope maybe you can figure it out, and I'll keep listening.
Well, thanks, Ben. Appreciate it, and appreciate you joining the program and calling in and listening here on the Sports Leader. Yeah, it is interesting. I think what it comes down to when you look at, it's another close game. They've had games against Portland like that. They've had games against the Pistons like that. They've had games against everybody like that. And what it is it's a sign that they're not good enough, to be perfectly honest. Like the inability to separate and turn these games into double-digit victories, it's a tell that they just aren't good enough. This team has a lot of good players. I agree with Ben as far as without a starting rotation, they can't win a championship. I mean, look at Denver. Denver is able to, and I said it on Dubs OT the other night, Denver ran the Warriors down from 18. It was basically what we saw the Warriors. The Warriors used to do that all the time to middling or mediocre or bad teams. Like, game looks over, and then they just, 18 becomes 11, 11 becomes 7, and it's like, they're going to win the game. Like, they're going to win the game. And Jokic, it was always, Steph's going to do something amazing or Clay's going to do something amazing, and Jokic did something amazing. Like, it felt very much on brand with the greatness of the Warriors over the last decade when they were the defending champs or the dominant team in the league. But how are they able to do? Well, they're able to do it because they've got a 2-time MVP and they've got Murray along with Jokic, and they know they're 5. And I know Michael Malone went away from Michael Porter Jr. in that game, but you have the foundation of who your best 5 is, and then you can build off of that. Like, they know it's Murray, it's Caldwell Pope, it's Jokic, it's Gordon, and it's going to be Michael Porter Jr. Like, they know that's the 5, and then, again, they can kind of spread it around. So, as far as, I agree, they have to figure it out, otherwise they can't contend for a championship. The reason we're talking about contending for a championship is because that's the stated goal for this team this season. Like, if their whole thing to run it back and Draymond coming back and signing the deal and Klay Thompson, the goal is to win a title. They all doubled and tripled down on each other. So it becomes really difficult. And if they do make a trade, there's a couple of different directions they could go. I mean, they could look to trade Wiggins and Looney and Chris Paul, although Chris Paul's injury may conflict things there a little bit. But they can look to do that to set up the young players' opportunities to play more. But if you're setting up the young players' opportunities to play more, then you're admitting that you're not winning a championship this year. But maybe you're better for it the next couple of years if you believe that Kuminga is a future 2 in terms of, or maybe a future 1. But in the short term, with Steph still playing at an extremely high level, of future 2. Like that, if you're going in on the young guys and development, because the Warriors are approaching this fork in the road. If you choose the young guys, well, then you better be sure that Kuminga is a future All-Star and at least a number 2 on a winning playoff level team, which for as much as Kuminga's been impactful and helped, there's no way in hell I can say that he's a bona fide number 2 by next year. And Podziemski's a really nice player, but it's too early to tell whether he's part of a future playoff core. Moody is Mr. Steady, playoff trustable for sure. Trace Jackson-Davis, nice player. Starting big on a championship team. Yeah, maybe if this version of Trace Jackson-Davis was on the Warriors 5 years ago, he could be a starting player. So it is tricky, and it's nothing against the young players. But the Warriors are going to have to choose here in the next month. Do they take from some of the vets to open up time for the younger players and basically choose development, admit they can't win it this year? Do they take from the young players to try and get younger vets to add to the older players? And do you believe that gets you over the hump? Because the risk has been laid out is you're eliminating your future. You trade Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody in the next month, and Kuminga does go on to be a number 1 or a number 2, and you don't have him, and 2 years from now, Klay Thompson's gone, and Steph Curry is clearly declining, and Draymond Green is Lord knows where or what, then you're in bigger trouble. So it's dicey. It really is. I mean, the next 5 to 10 years, you could make the case, are going to be shaped by ultimately what the Warriors decide to do or not do February 8th. And, the Kuminga-Wiggins debate is part of it. Chris Paul's injury, I think, now becomes part of it. Draymond being out has meant more Podziemski and CP3. Now CP3's out. That opens the door for others. We'll get to that and what Steve Kerr had to say about it coming up here on the Sports Leader. But this team's also not winning right now. This team's not a 500 team even. So there's a lot of things that need to be sorted out, but I'm with Ben that without some semblance of a legitimate knowing what your starters are going to be on a night in, night out basis. And look, Draymond's coming back at some point, apparently soon. How does that impact, is it the starting lineup? How does that impact Looney? Could Looney be expendable because Trace Jackson-Davis is somebody you want to be the backup center, and you're going to start to play Draymond maybe more at 5 again? It just feels like when the Warriors figure 2 or 3 things out, they've still got 2 or 3 other things that pop up that they have to fix, and they're just constantly searching. And that's no way to win a championship. Even 2 years ago, it really, maybe as a surprise to the Warriors, but it became pretty set. It was Steph. It was Jordan Poole filling in for Clay until Clay came back. Then Poole went to the bench. It was Wiggins, who was playing awesome. It was Draymond. It was Looney. And you even knew you knew it was Otto Porter and GP2 off the bench. Like, you knew you were, and Jordan Poole when Clay came back. Like, you knew your top 8. And then maybe it was a little bit of Kuminga and a little bit of Moody and a little bit of Bielitsa was the 9. Like, the Warriors had the set group 2 years ago. They did. And that was the team that got off 18-2 even without Clay, and were 41-14 and end up winning a title. So this team and last year's team has had no semblance of that level of consistency to build off of. And there was no debate about young versus old. It was Kuminga got in where he fit in. Moody played only when necessary. Like, the young players really were not a part of the championship team 2 years ago. They were on the team. They played bit parts here and there, but they were not really a part of it. It was Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, Looney, Poole, Peyton, Porter, Bielitsa, and then, all right, Kuminga, Moody, Chiozza. I'm kidding. I don't want Chris Chiozza was the Ty Jerome of Corey Josephs. Anyway, I don't want to get Warrior fans all riled up. More Corey Joseph minutes coming with the injury to Chris Paul. 808 KNBR, let's get to Sean in San Rafael. Sean, how are you doing this morning? Thanks for joining the program.
I'm pretty good, JD.
Good. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind, my friend?
Well, I wanted to talk about the CP3 injury.
Okay.
And how other people are going to, get more minutes and stuff.
How would you divvy it up?
I would give Moody some minutes, especially because he hasn't been playing a bunch as of late. I'd give him some minutes. Joseph might get a few in there. And then Pajemski, this might be a little biased because Pajemski's my favorite player on the team personally.
Nice.
So, yeah. I hope he gets more minutes because I love seeing him play.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sean. And, hey, thanks, Sean. Really appreciate the call. Don't make it your last call. We're going to be doing this show every Saturday, so feel free to join in if you're listening or if you're watching on YouTube. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, one more thing.
Yeah.
Luke, Steph Curry is – I know my friend Luke is listening. Luke, Steph Curry's better than Jalen Brunson. Stop the debate right now. Steph Curry is better than Jalen Brunson.
Hey, Sean, how old are you, bud?
I'm 13.
Okay, sweet. All right, appreciate it, man. Thanks for calling in. I wanted to, yeah, nothing like Sean calling in, airing out his middle school debates.
I'm not that much older than those days, JD.
Oh, come on. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Nothing like Sean airing. Let me tell you, when JD was 13, JD would have been airing out his middle school debates between Steph Curry and Brunson. And what was his friend's name? I can't remember his friend's name.
Luke.
Yeah. Miss me with that, Luke. Miss me with Jalen Brunson, Luke. I'm trying to think what it would have been. I don't want to date myself as far as what it would have been, but oh, that's funny. Good stuff. Appreciate it. Well, all right. pretty good assessment, I think, as far as where the Warriors go. Let's hear from Steve Kerr as to what he said about Chris Paul's injury and it opening the door for others.
Both Brandon and Corey will play more at the point, and probably brings Moses also back into the rotation because you're replacing 30 minutes from Chris. So we won't replace all those minutes with one guy. We'll probably spread them out. But I'm excited to get Moses back out there. I thought he was great tonight. He brought a lot of energy. Great to hear the fans chanting his name. You know, he's a fan favorite for a reason. He plays hard, and being out of the loop the last few games has been tough on him, but he always stays ready. So I'm excited to get him back in there.
How about that? Moses Moody chants at Chase Center last night. Warrior fans are just like disenfranchised lately, it feels like. Demanding Kuminga, demanding Moody. It was nice to see Moses Moody get back on the floor. He's a pro. And by the way, he had a little leakage of his own about being dissatisfied. Sounds like Sean could be coaching the Warriors at this point, because that was basically his idea was almost verbatim what Steve Kerr said. Yeah, Moody's going to play. I wonder if Podziemski goes back into the starting lineup. He had been in the starting lineup for CP3 before the last couple of games. But they need to have a playmaker out there with Draymond not out there. And I do think moving Clay basically to the 3 has helped. But then you get into the whole 2 small guards playing together, and I know that creates problems defensively. I think I'd start Podziemski. I'd bring Moody in off the bench and throw him in the rotation. Corey Joseph is going to have to get a few minutes. Don't drive off the road, Warrior fans. But I think Moody and Podziemski get the bulk of the 30-minute void, but Corey Joseph is going to have to play a couple of maybe 4-minute shifts a half, or at least a 4-minute shift in the first half, and then you can finagle it in the second half based on what the game dictates. But thanks for the call, Sean. Appreciate it. And yeah, you tell Luke you don't want to hear any of that Jalen Brunson nonsense.
Stop the debate right now.
Stop the debate right now, Sean. Appreciate you calling here on the Sports Leader. 808 KNBR is the number. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line as well. Do have a couple of text messages to get to. I'm not neglecting the YouTubers. I'm not. I'm still kind of getting my screen discipline down here in the studio. There's screens everywhere. There's like the screen that shows me in real time. There's the screen that shows what's on the stream. There's the call screen. There's the call screen. I got my screen. I got a bunch of screens. I'm always like looking around, like what's going on in here.
Should I start texting you just to give you another screen to look at?
It's the one I've got. I got my screen that I take all my notes on. There's just a lot of screens. It's a little overwhelming sometimes. It's like look left if you want calls, look right if you want YouTube. We got the text in front of me. So yeah, YouTube chat. There are a number of different things I want to get to. But let's get back to the phones at 808 KNBR. It's just Dubs here on the Sports Leader. Connor in Dublin joins us next. Hey, Connor. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, JD. How are you?
Good, man. Good.
I think a big problem with the Warriors right now is, Draymond Green coming back. Like, what does that mean for, the rotation, just him playing with all the newer, younger guys, how will that work? I just wanted to know your thoughts about that, and also just the game last night. It was just it's a gross win. It was awful.
It was.
And I didn't like it. I'm glad I didn't watch the game. I listened to it, but I guess a clutch game against the 3-31 Pistons. That just doesn't it doesn't sound very good. I don't know what are your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it was awful. It really was. Connor, and appreciate the call. It was, I thought it was the worst game of the season, just from an aesthetics point of view. It was the worst game of the season. It was rough to be at. It was rough to watch on television. It was just rough. And so it is indicative of, really the last two nights, I think, are indicative of basically everything the Warriors have been this season. They have the ability to get up 18 on the defending champions. They blow leads against everybody. They play close games against everybody. It just, they got internal strife. They can't figure out the lineups. I see you, Uncle Looney, on the YouTube. Detroit does play hard. They just can't close. Yeah, they do. They've had a lot of games. Detroit's actually played that game a lot in the last couple of weeks as they were trying to end their 28-game losing streak. And
doesn't remind me of anybody.
You're going to compare? Don't compare. You compare Detroit to the Warriors?
No, the Warriors beat them. They're a little better than Detroit.
Oh my God! If we're doing that, we need to just change the whole show. If we're getting into that, but it was. I mean, the Warriors went down with like 2 minutes left. Bogdanovich hits a three all of a sudden. They were up 11. It's like they're down to Detroit, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Like, just call the whole thing off if we're going to start having to talk about losses. Although, again, they got swept by Detroit last year. All right, 808 KNBR is the number. How will Draymond affect things when he comes back? I do want to answer that question, but we'll do it on the other side. We got 1 hour down, 1 hour to come. It's Just Dubs with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader.
Luke, Steph Curry's better than Jalen Brunson. Stop the debate right now.
Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
There's a report out, so there's no inkling of if he'll be able to be here in the next few days. And
I don't know that. So apparently someone else does, but I don't yet.
Yeah. How about that? Steve Kerr asked about seemingly a nightly pregame press conference. It's become a tradition. It's Just Dubs here on KNBR, the sports leader. John Dickinson with you until noon. Greg Silver, Raf Corral in studio as well. Yeah, it's become, Greg, a nightly pregame tradition in the Steve Kerr press conference of you got to raise your hand and Steve, there's a report that we need you to reference because the Warriors are just leaking like a freaking sieve right now, left and right. You got Draymond. Steve's like, I don't know, Draymond. Then somebody's telling Woj, well, he's coming back soon, and then Kuminga's pissed off and Moody's upset and everybody's talking. Warriors low key in shambles. like it feels that way when the Warriors lose right now. It just feels like they're in just complete disarray.
Well, you know how we can do audio drops on the show, like courtesy of our caller Sean? I wish we could have a video drop of just lip syncing of Steve Kerr on the bench saying, "I'm so effing tired of Draymond's stuff."
Yeah, well, he's about to get a dose. He hadn't had it for a while. And I do think it was a little weird initially it seemed as if Draymond was going to be around. And I think the Warriors even said, hey, he's going to practice, even though he's not going to be with the team. And then it became, well, he's in the building, but not really at the times the Warriors are practicing. And then it just has turned into, well, he's not really in the building at all. And maybe if he is, I haven't seen him. That's like Steve Kerr. Maybe he's here, maybe he's not. I haven't seen him. I don't know.
I want to bring this up to you, actually, because we don't know exactly what the day-to-day behind closed doors is like. And I know that these coaches and players get asked so many questions all the time. So taking every little response and nitpicking isn't always going to lead you to answers. But to me, it is a little bit strange that Steve Kerr has said, I don't know anything about that. And then also when asked about Draymond, he's like, oh yeah, we're just giving him space. And there's no contact.
That was the quote. That was the weird quote. That definitely. That was the one that was like, okay. It's like basically you don't want to see him and he didn't want to see you is what, I mean, it's like a breakup for crying out loud. To be honest, that's what it sounds like when you use that term. Yeah, you're just going to let it breathe for a little bit and see where things shake out. But it does lead back to Connor's question at 808 KNBR, as it is Just Dubs here on the Sports Leader. New show for 2024. Going to be with you each and every Saturday morning here on KNBR, talking Warriors, talking NBA, and a lot to get to for Golden State as Jonathan Kuminga and Steve Kerr mend fences. Chris Paul's going to be out for the foreseeable future with a fractured hand. Trade deadline looming. And then, Draymond Green's coming back at some point. We're going to hear from Bob Myers on Draymond and everything going on with him coming up. But the question from Connor was basically, how will Draymond Green coming back impact things? And I've been pretty consistent. I mean, it still feels like he's a week away from being a week away right now. And we're already January 6th. So a week away from being a week away is basically, nothing tomorrow or Wednesday when they play the Pelicans. Then they go to Chicago and Milwaukee and Memphis and Utah. And then they come back on the 19th and they play Dallas. And then they have a weird gap. Like they play 2 weeks from last night on the 19th, and then they don't play Saturday. They don't play Sunday. They don't play Monday. They don't play Tuesday, which is nice for everybody that's going to be 49er focused because then that Niner weekend the Warriors are basically like, yeah, Niners, take it. Like, they're going to play Friday night, and then the Niners are going to have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, where we'll go all in on the Niners. And then the Warriors will reemerge with the remainder of what is another 5-game homestand. It feels to me like Draymond's coming back. What would that be? January 24th. Feels to me like he's coming back January 24th, if I had to pinpoint it. So how will things look and how will that impact? I have no clue, because I have no idea what the hell's going to be going on with this Warriors team 3 weeks from now, basically. I mean, everything changes constantly on a nightly basis. Erwin Kwong on the YouTube chat, Draymond was at LeBron's party, though. Yeah, I know. That was odd stuff going on where Draymond's supposed to be getting, the help that he needs to control the temper and all of that. I'm sure he's going through the paces to try and get back, but it was interesting that the Warriors basically had seemingly spoken about discounting Draymond and the need for Draymond to be around, and then immediately it was like, no, Draymond's coming back. He's coming back. Like, there is just a yin and a yang with the whole conversation as to one camp says one thing, another camp says another thing. It just feels like it's like constant right now. It's with Draymond, with Kuminga, Moody. Let's hear from Bob Myers. And Connor, I do want to answer your question that you got to before the top of the hour break here. I mean, at this point, I think if Draymond was coming back tomorrow, he'd be coming off the bench. And he'd basically be, and somebody in the YouTube chat pointed this out, and I don't want to not give credit. It might have been Erwin. Apologies if it wasn't, but it was basically Draymond will be the backup point guard. Which, and that if he came back tomorrow, I think that's true. He'd be the backup point guard. And, obviously they'd work out, but then it would take some of Moses. Then you wouldn't have to play Corey Joseph.
Oh, thank goodness for the Warrior fan base.
So, but yeah, if Draymond was willing to come off the bench in a playoff series, then I think he would be willing to come off the bench if the Warriors are rolling. If the Warriors are not rolling, then, you're better off with him. I think the Warriors defense will be significantly improved when Draymond Green comes back, but it's wild. Let's hear from Bob Myers. Bob Myers on NBA Countdown on ESPN and ABC. I think it was both this week because there was an ESPN and an ABC game on Wednesday. And the Warriors are part of that ABC pack. How about this? Not to get off on another tangent, Greg, but how about this 5:30 Pacific Wednesday night thing? Like, there's games on ABC every Wednesday. I think it has to do with the writer's strike. Inside base. I think because there weren't going to be enough shows ready because of the writer's strike. I think they were like, that was part of why the NFL started having every Monday night game ended up on ABC. Like, originally it was like summer on ESPN, summer on ABC. Like, it was because of the writer's strike. They didn't have shows because they didn't have shows because the writers weren't working. So we're going to put the NFL on Mondays. I believe the ABC Wednesday showcase was a byproduct of that. Anyway, random fact, fun fact for you here on the Sports Leader. Let's hear Bob Myers. Bob Myers and Stephen A. and everybody, they were all talking about Draymond and what the hell's going on. Here's what Bob had to say.
Draymond Green is such a good defensive player and has been such a great leader. That's been tested lately. And there's a void. That's the truth. There's a void without him. He's good enough to make any team a good defensive team. So without him, they're 16th, 17th in the league in defense. He's always made the Warriors a good defensive team. The hard thing with these things is when a player goes through something like this, or a team, and I was there for many distractions, it's just hard. It takes energy. It takes energy to deal with these things. It takes energy to have to lose a player for amount of time, to bring him back into the fold. Steve Kerr's trying to figure out the rotations. And when Draymond gets back, that kind of all starts over again. Steph has had to try to figure out the reliance of Curry on Draymond is something we all know and know well. Mm-hmm. So and then he loses him. But it's something that has caused in many ways, a period of time where it's just a great amount of uncertainty. And now they got to come back when he comes back, when that is, and figure it out again. And it's just exhausting.
It is exhausting. And, yeah, I mean, the Steph component, I mean, Steph's a better player when Draymond's playing with him regularly. The rotations change. He will help the defense, but again, even if Draymond comes off the bench initially, he's probably taking Kuminga's spot when he goes back into the starting lineup, unless he takes the center spot and Kuminga plays the 4. Because the one thing I don't think we're going to see, as much as Warrior fans want to see it, we're not going to see a center Draymond Kuminga at the 3 lineup. I think not this year. The Warriors just have not played Kuminga at the 3 at all, really, and they didn't at all last year. And Steve Kerr keeps getting asked about it, and he basically is like, yeah, if I play him at the 3, then I got to have Saric out there. I got to have shooting out there. And the Warriors don't have enough shooting at other positions, as crazy as that sounds with Steph and Klay still on the team, to warrant playing Kuminga at the 3. So, and I think his handle's a little loose still, and he gets better shots when he plays the 4 in the context of the Warriors offense. I think that's the bottom line. So Draymond coming back impacts everything. 808 KNBR is the number, and it's all connected. Draymond's connected to Kuminga. Kuminga's connected to this rift that he had with Steve Kerr. It's young versus old. In terms of how do you it's complementary players, and how do you figure the rotation out? But I think the key point there from Bob Myers is he says it's exhausting. It's exhausting to have to go through and it does feel like the Warriors can never. They have this to-do list of things they want to do, and they start checking a couple off, and then a couple more pop up.
And it's just exhausting.
They just never can. I can feel the pain. Like that was like, I you could feel it in that. Like, Bob was basically, when Bob says this is exhausting, it's like Bob saying, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with this anymore. Right, Greg? I mean, it just, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, one of the things I love about Bob Myers on ESPN is that I'm always going to want to hear what he has to say, because he knows this team and these players and a situation like Draymond getting suspended better than anybody else that can speak to it. As much as I love to hear Stephen A. Smith yell about it, or Woj give a nice little agent's report, Bob Myers, I'm always going to take what he says with a value times 15. And it is exhausting. How could it not be? Steve Kerr, it's funny. We were talking about answering the questions in the pregame and how it's become this funny ritual, and it's always feeding into the Warrior fans.
There was a report from Shams. Steve, there was a report from Woj. Steve, Moses Moody spoke to Cron 4.
And it's just exhausting.
It just, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying everyone's doing a perfect job, but it's a full plate there for the Warriors. If you're Steph Curry or Steve Kerr.
Nobody's happy right now, Steve. There's a million different stories from a million anonymous sources, all pretty accurate. Can you respond to them, please? I mean, and you wonder what's next at this point. Like, you think, hey, tomorrow, maybe not. But
we'll hit it one more time.
But it's just exhausting.
But it's Saturday. The other option is what Dan in Richmond, I have a feeling, is going to propose. Dan, welcome in to Just Dubs here with JD on a Saturday on the Sports Leader. Go ahead, bring it to the table, my man.
Hey, John, Raf, I hope you're having a good Saturday, everybody. It's a couple years back when Green and Poole went at it. It just seemed to me like a pro team can't keep both of them, and I guess as a Barry guy, you want to keep Draymond from the championship days and all, and all the struggles and all the challenges that he met, as well as his teammates. But it just seemed like maybe Poole going is fine, in terms of his career moving on. But I think that now, looking back, I thought the Warriors should have traded Green to the Michigan team, Michigan State team, whatever you want to say, Detroit.
That's right.
And then they could have got Sadiq Bey and maybe a pick. Bey had a hell of a season last year, and he stuck it to the Warriors actually later in the season. I think he won with a three-pointer later in, I don't know, somewhere in the season there. And then, I just thought that now he's on Atlanta, so that's not going to work out in that regard. But nonetheless, I don't know. I just thought maybe Draymond needs a new challenge, and the Warriors could have used the energy. I mean, a prep team or a college team, they got to find a way to get the guys to work together or boot somebody. But a pro team, you don't see that really hanging in there too long, and it really messed the Warriors up last year, probably the whole season. And
all right, Dan, thanks, man.
And we
appreciate it. We'll appreciate it, Dan. Thanks. 808 KNBR. The number. Yeah, that I don't know about trading Draymond for Sadiq Bey or whatever the heck that was, but I mean it did obviously cause an issue. But the Warriors, look, the Warriors asked for a lot of the problems that they currently face. I mean, I always go back to May 12th last year, down in LA, covering that series. The Warriors get beat in Game 6. It's the first time ever they don't win a road game in a playoff series since Steph, Clay, and Draymond were playing together. They get beat, and it's not even 30 seconds after the final horn. There's already talking about sources and reports and like Slater and I think it was Sam Amick maybe or Sham. Anyway, it was The Athletic already had a story. Basically, hey, the Warriors are bringing everybody back. And then in the post-game press conferences, Steve Kerr's like, yep, I want Bob Myers back. I want Clay back. I want Draymond back. We want to run it back. This team's still good enough. The core three still has the ability to win a title. So when you do that and you basically say you're a couple of tweaks away and then things don't work out, you ask for it. I mean, they chose this path. The question now is, do they choose to pivot from it? But I think they made the right call. I still think they made the right call. If it came down to Draymond had to go or Jordan Poole had to go, I still think the Warriors made the right call as far as Poole being the one that had to go. And just on that front, before we get to the YouTube chat here on Just Dubs, here on the Sports Leader, Jordan Poole right now has the worst plus minus in the NBA of 520 players. 520 players in the NBA have played. This is via NBA Central. 520 players have played. Poole's a minus 342. Basically, you could make the case he's the worst player in the NBA this year for a starter. Basically, the worst starting player in the NBA. In terms of plus minus, it's fact. So the Warriors made the right decision.
I think my favorite quote of the year from anybody, JD, was Kyle Kuzma saying early on in the year that the Wizards couldn't defend a stop sign.
It's pretty true. So yeah, that's the Warriors made the right decision, but now it's how do you figure it out? All right, couple of things I want to get to in the YouTube chat. Uncle Looney with the updated number, and it was even a +7 last night, but the updated number, Wiggs and Kuminga on the court at the same time, minus 66. Is that right? Because I don't think it was that bad. But it wasn't good. And Steve Kerr said earlier in the week, the tape is bad and the numbers are bad. And so it's not something that Kerr's really looking forward to doing. We're going to make sure that that number is accurate, because I wanted to say it was minus 20s.
Uncle Looney coming in with the updated stat.
Oh, okay, minus 59. Now, okay, you gave me the +7 from last night. Okay, I know it was +7 from last night. But yeah, it was. I actually didn't think it was that bad, but it must have fluctuated in the last week as Steve Kerr's actually played him a little bit more. Anyway, I digress on that. It basically has become a scenario where it's Wiggins or Kuminga. And I know we had somebody in the YouTube chat that said, well, they don't even play the same position. They do and they don't. Wiggins plays the 3 and the 4. Right now, they're basically playing the same position with Draymond out. They're both basically playing the 4, and Saric is playing some 4. But Wiggins does play the 3. I mean, in the starting lineup, Wiggins would play the 3. Regulator, facts. The Warriors can't wait to tell Shams or Woj everything. It's like a soap opera. Well, it's not even necessarily, I mean, some of it I think is the Warriors. But as Woodpit 420 says, it's mainly the agents of players. When it's player leak news, like the Kuminga, Moody, and Draymond part, the Draymond is coming back soon, that to me is all 3 of those are agents. And with Draymond specifically, it's the agent basically saying, after Kerr's like, yeah, I don't know when Draymond's coming back. Hadn't been here. Haven't seen him. Reminds it was almost like the Jim Tom Sula. I can't believe it's almost like Jay Feely, the kicker. I haven't seen him. What? He's talking to who? So yeah, it reminded me of that. But anyway, the agent's like, no, he's coming back next week. Don't paint Draymond like he's coming back a month from now or never coming back. So yeah, it's tough. There's no doubt about it. Erwin Kwong losing CP3 brings the Warriors a step closer to being the Pistons. Man, last night was ugly. Last night was really, 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 really ugly. A win is a win is a win, right? Uncle Looney, you can fact check that. I heard it. Okay. I thought it was more like minus 28 or something like that. But whatever it was, they played their best basketball together last night against the Pistons, who basically can't shoot. The biggest issue is if you have both of them out there, Wiggs gets super timid. Kuminga's always going to be aggressive looking for a shot. Wiggins' shot is broken, seemingly again, so he can't make a shot. So you just can't have the both of them out there together because neither one of them can make a 3. And if one's playing the 3 and the other's playing the 4, then that means you got a center out there that probably can't shoot. So you basically have 3 guys that can't shoot. So if you're going to have the 2 of them out there together, or you're going to play Kuminga at the 3, you basically have to have not just Steph and Clay. You got to have Steph, Clay, and the third player has to be a shooter. So it's almost Steph, Clay, and Saric is what Steve Kerr had said.
Well, you're bringing up a really good point, JD, because we've talked about Wiggins and Kuminga kind of being the same player and kind of not. I would argue that when Wiggins can't shoot, like has been the case, and his shot is broken, they kind of are the same player offensively, and that their way of scoring needs to and kind of is the same, which is getting downhill, backing people down in the post, taking shots within 6 feet of the rim, and not really jacking up a bunch of threes unless they're wide open. So offensively, I understand that if you put Wiggins and Kuminga out there together and Wiggins can't shoot, it gets real stagnant real fast.
It does. No doubt. It absolutely does. It's just a matter of it. It really is indicative of the position that the Warriors are in right now, because they do have a lot of players that they like in a lot of different ways, but it's not as simple as play this guy or play that guy. It becomes, if I play this guy, I got to play another guy with them. And then if I play those 2, then another 2 are not on the floor. And so and then you're trying to figure out a rotation on top of that. Paul Tamayo was the guy who said when Draymond comes back, he plays the backup point. That's a good call. Good call. 808 KNBR is the number. It's John Dickinson. It's just Dubs. It's the first show here on The Sports Leader. We're going to be doing it each and every Saturday morning. We got Greg Silver here. We got Raph in the house as well. More from the YouTube chat, more from the phone lines. What do the Warriors do with Jonathan Kuminga? as things have calmed down a little bit over where they were 24 hours ago. How does Draymond Green get reintegrated into things? Chris Paul is going to be out probably for a month, if not longer. And the Warriors are still under 500. We'll get into all of that coming up. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
And now they got to come back when he comes back, when that is, and figure it out again. And it's just exhausting.
Just Dubs with John Dickinson keeps rolling. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Warriors down a point. Saric has 8 points in 8 minutes. Podziemski drives. Behind the back. Great ball movement. Oh, yes, sir. The passing in this game for both teams has been exquisite.
All right, the Denver game. Going back to that one. Brian Anderson, TNT. Stan Van Gundy on the call for that one. Man, what a gut punch that was, man. Brutal loss. And a Warrior fan still stinging. How about the Warriors themselves still stinging from that one? Brandon Podziemski mentioned it in the press conference that they were still feeling, they kind of played like it, to be honest. Last night, about as ugly a win as you could get. We're back here. It's Just Dubs with JD. KNBR, the sports leader. New show each and every Saturday. We do have KNBR Hits of the Week coming up at the top of the 12 o'clock hour here on the Sports Leader. And then we will reconvene with Dubs OT tomorrow following the Warriors and the Raptors. A lot of trade winds swirling surrounding the Raptors. And it relates back to just kind of where do the Warriors go? I know the Raptors were in Sacramento last night, and there were reports in the afternoon about, hey, the Kings are the front runners, basically, for Pascal Siakam. And then the whole thing got pulled down within 45 minutes. It was Shams, and then Shams is like, yeah, I think these things are fluid. The Kings are pulling out of the deal or out of the conversations. And that could be a number of different things. It could be, hey, and I'm theorizing here, but it could be as simple as, oh, you want Keegan Murray in the deal? Yeah, we out. I mean, it could be. I thought we were getting Siakam for Kevin Huerter and Davion Mitchell and Harrison Barnes. Oh yeah, and dial tone up. Oh, sorry. Up. So sometimes it could be that. Sometimes it could be another team ups the ante a little bit. And I know Chris Haynes had reported that the Warriors, in his mind, are a little bit of a dark horse maybe on Siakam. So it's all interconnected as Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga mend fences. Season high 36 minutes for Kuminga after he didn't play the final 18 against Denver. Chris Paul is out, fractured left hand. Draymond Green's coming back at some point. And the trade deadline now looming a month and a couple of days away with the Warriors still under 500. And they can lament and complain and wish and hope and dream that they were 4 or 5 games better than they are. But the reality is they are what their record says they are. And I know there's a few Warrior fans in the YouTube chat. Hey, they're better than the Lakers. They are, in fact, better than the Lakers all of a sudden. Warriors with the win last night, coupled with the Lakers' 4th consecutive loss. They're 17-18. The Dubs. The Lakers are 17-19. So there's that one team that believes they're unequivocally good enough to be in the top 10, which gets you a play-in tournament berth at a minimum. And there's going to be one team that ends up on the outside looking in. And right now that team would be the Lakers. For the last couple of weeks, it's mostly been the Warriors. Could end up being the Rockets, who I think a lot of people thought would have been in that 3rd-tier division. Although the Rockets are much improved, even if they aren't. If they wind up still being 11th in the West, they're still very much improved. But the Lakers right now are that one team that would be the team that would be on the outside looking in.
High five.
So, yeah. Warriors slowly moving forward, and we'll see. I mean, things can change. It feels fragile and fluid right now for the Warriors. I think that's the best way to put it. Everything feels fragile, but it also feels extremely fluid. They win a couple games in a row, you start to think, maybe there's action here. Maybe the Warriors got action. But then they inevitably lose a game like they did against Denver. And then you're like, yeah, no, this thing may need to go in a completely different direction. And it leads back to, do the Warriors at some point in the next month determine that this thing is worth going for? meaning subtracting young players to bring in veterans. And when I say veterans, I'm not talking about players in their 30s. I'm talking about Siakam's 29, going to be 30. I'm not talking about 32, 33-year-olds. I'm talking about 27, 26 to 29-year-olds is what I'm thinking. And again, do the Warriors have enough young talent to facilitate that kind of a trade? Or do you just ride it out with Jonathan Kuminga and Podziemski and Trace Jackson-Davis? And is there a scenario where maybe you trade veterans, Wiggins, Looney, Chris Paul, and you just reshuffle the deck and continue with the champion core guys plus the young players and try to develop? It's funny, as much as they've gotten away from two timelines, it feels like two timelines is kind of back a little bit, Greg.
Yeah, well, I don't want to come in with a bummer perspective, but I'd rather bring this up in early January than in late March, which is if there's any indication of, oh, well, we've seen what they can be. They beat the Celtics at home in dramatic fashion. They were up 18 on the defending champions.
Yeah, well, last night.
And last year is kind of the sample you need to look at, where I think there was a lot of arrogance, and I don't mean from the team, I mean from the fan base and a lot of people who had really believed in this team, that, oh, well, they're just going to flip the switch when the time matters. You can't be inconsistent for an entire season and then just magically flip the switch and have nothing go wrong and everything break in your favor and expect to get to the finals. Yes, the Warriors are very much capable of making it a series with one of the better teams in the Western Conference. But are you going to tell me they're going to win 4 times out of 7 3 times in a row to get to the finals over really good teams with how inconsistently they have delivered? I know it's hard to get past teams with championship DNA. Nobody would want to face Steph Curry in a 7-game series. But this team doesn't make their opponents uncomfortable, especially when we're talking defensively.
No, look, Warriors opponents the Warriors are not feared. The Warriors are not feared the way that they used to be. Every team knows they can come back against them. Every team knows they can compete and contend in individual games against them. And I think it's why they're basically a middle of the pack team in every facet. And they thought they were going to be better than that this year. They're not better than that this year. In part because because of the blown leads, but the blown leads are still a part of this DNA. Hell, they blew an 11-point lead last night to the freaking Pistons. Put them in position to lose that game. They're up 11. All of a sudden, they're down 1, and Steph's got to go crazy at the end to basically save the game. 808 KNBR is the number. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line here on the Sports Leader. Let's go ahead and hear from Steph Curry, because I thought this was a pretty telling comment in a number of different ways as we get back into Steve Kerr, Jonathan Kuminga, more from the YouTube chat coming up here in just a second. But here's what Steph had to say about Jonathan Kuminga and Steve Kerr kind of putting everything to rest.
Everything you just said, like I've been there before. He's not wrong in being upset and pissed off, wanting to play, probably should have played. Not probably. But to your point, like, the ultimate challenge for anybody in this league is to not let the narrative be told for you, and you not be able to address that with your own voice or directly with coach or whatever the case is. So we all go through our challenges. We all go through our learning lessons. And as I said, he's not wrong for being upset and frustrated. I heard coach talk about, he's kind of half joking but serious about 15 years. He was always upset about playing time, and that's a talking point in every locker room in some way, shape, or form. But the ways to express it, ways to voice your opinion but protect the team. And I'm just proud of the way we talked about it before the game, but you go out and play, go hoop, be a professional, and that's what he did tonight.
All right. So Stephen Curry there basically saying, hey, he's got a right to be ticked off, but he didn't handle it in the right way. But put it behind you, go out and ball. And look, Steph Curry, everybody knows the AC Law era of Stephen Curry's career where Keith Smart was playing AC Law over him. So Steph's been through it. You're talking about one of the all-time greats who was basically being benched at the end of games for somebody who was out of the league in pretty short order. So it happens. And I don't think anything that's going on with Kuminga is that dramatic. But it's about how you handle it. And look, I think all of the comments from Kuminga in the Athletic story and via other sources have shown, that these two have moved on from it. I'm a little more optimistic that maybe a move doesn't have to be made than I was going back to 24 hours ago. 24 hours ago, I'm thinking, you know what? They may just have to move on from Kuminga. Unless they're going to fully commit to giving him minutes and not being focused on winning a title and all of that. Like if you choose to develop the young guys, that's a choice. That's fine. But you're also out on what your original season goal was, which was contend for a championship. Like, you're not going to have it both ways. Like, there's no world where it's Steph, Clay, Draymond, and then the next four, Kuminga, Moody, Trace Jackson Davis, and Podziemski, and you're winning a title. Like, that's just not – that's this year. Where it's just, play the three OGs and the four young guys that everybody loves, and that's your seven. Don't see that. But I do like what Kuminga said. Kuminga said, quote, and this was via The Athletic and Anthony Slater, quote, I love it here. I got drafted here. There's always ups and downs. I feel like when you look at all the ups and downs, that will confuse a lot of people. But I know Steve believes in me. I know he trusts me at this point. So that's good. It was just more about communication and better understanding. It was no beef. Kuminga went on to say, I never complained about playing time during the meeting. We were just talking about if I do great at something, just go back and remind him, yo, coach, what do I need to do to get better at this? What do I need to do to get better, earn your trust for more minutes? Communication. And then he went in, and I thought this was fascinating. He said, I'm going to keep it real. I went to coach and talked about me playing with Wiggs, because that's been a huge part of the debate, and I think continues to be. I don't want it to seem like me and Wiggs are out here fighting every day for minutes. I know Wiggs doesn't come to work every day thinking about that. Same with me. I don't come to work every day thinking about taking Wiggs minutes, taking this guy's minutes. We come here to play good and help the team win and accomplish things that we all as a team are about. Championship and all of that. Whenever the team wins, everybody wins. Just moving forward, it's all about the team and what the team needs first and concerned about the rest later. So that is the best. So Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga both have put the best foot forward. Really mature. Really mature. Because this thing had the potential to go completely awry toward the path of, hey, I want out, last straw, trade me. And, I do think a lot of this is a byproduct of Kuminga really wanting to help and being thoughtful and just believing, hey, I'm good. I can really help push this team forward. I think at times maybe that has gotten confused with some of the things that I think have come out of his camp or come out via his agent. Because I think those things have come off as a little more, I think I'm better than I really am at this point. Like the agent talk has been really, and the things that leaked about Kuminga have been really, like, I don't even think what he said to Marcus Thompson after the Christmas game was anything. It wasn't anything inflammatory or anything like that. I don't think that was the game to make that statement. Like, if he had made that statement after the game 2 nights ago, I'd be like, okay, I get that. But the temperature coming down is a good thing for the Warriors. Because the best thing that could happen is he continues to grow and they figure out a way to have him be an effective role player on this team while continuing to develop into whatever the high ceiling player he is down the line. Like, that's the one thing I've always said. And accused of not being the biggest Kuminga guy or being too hard on Kuminga, this, that, and the other. And the reality is it's not about that. It's not about lack of belief in the talent or anything like that. It's just the reality that the Warriors are more concerned right now about how he fits on this team this season as a role player than they are about him getting his $100 million bag or whether he's an all-star 2-3 years from now. The Warriors' stance on this is, JK, just do the things that we want you to do, and you will get there. You will get there. But I think when agents and camps get involved and friends and family and all that, I get it. It's world-altering, life-changing, generational money. So anybody would be feeling the same way when you're that close to getting it if you can perform. So I understand that it's a component of that, but I think that's been the disconnect between the Warriors and Kuminga has been, I think, about the other stuff. I think it's about how he views himself a little bit as a player. I think he does think he's a little bit farther along than he is. I think he does think he's a little bit more of a dynamic player than maybe he is. But again, it doesn't come down to a lack of belief in his ceiling. I think his ceiling is extremely high. Like, I think it's future all-star high. And I've said that. But the Warriors are all in championship or bust, which means that his game for this season has to fit in the box of being a role player. And for the last month, he's been that. And he's helped this Warriors team. It's just a matter of when other players come back and get into the fold, can they effectively, along with Kuminga, find a way to have him be able to continue that role? All right, YouTube chat here. Final couple of minutes. Appreciate AJ Cruz 75. JD on a Saturday just feels right. Yes, it does. And we're going to be with you each and every Saturday here on KNBR, the sports leader, with the Just Dubs show. Judith, Happy New Year, JD. Judith Pierre. Appreciate you, Judith. And I'm with you. That Denver loss was a gut punch. Still mad is Judith. I'm so PO'd. Yes, they have snatched defeat from the mouth of victory. Appreciate you chiming in. Rockin' New Era 84. Always good to see you, Uncle Looney. Really good stuff. Lot of too many comments to get to, and I do like to get to a lot of them. Irwin, Warriors' superpower of always playing to the level of their competition. Big facts. This was the one I wanted to get to from Judith. JD, I honestly believe at this point it's time to develop the young guys. They could be good enough to help the core guys win a chip. That's the question. I don't think that can be done this year. But if you think it can be done last year, if you think it can be done next year, there's a reason to go in on it for this year. But you got to have a focused plan and a belief in it. Amar Singh, it's a 500 team, right at 500. Don't see a huge coaching issue. Uncle Looney, great to hear you, JD. Woodpit, awesome show, JD. Paul, JD, the people's champ. Moses Moody's going to get his opportunity. There's no doubt. So, yeah, if I didn't get to your comments, appreciate it. We'll get to you next week. We're back tomorrow. Dubs OT with JD following the Warriors and the Raptors. Big thanks to Greg Silver. Big thanks to Raf Corral as well. Wonderful stuff. And, again, we're going to be doing this each and every Saturday here on KNBR, the sports leader. Talk to you tomorrow following the Dubs and the Raptors. KNBR Hits of the Week is what's coming up next right here. KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Can you just email me the rest of this story?